we have a caller, and I've been so excited. Like, he called in really early, and I want to have this discussion. Can we talk to Brian in Florida?
Sure.
All right. Brian, you're live with Eric and V. Hey.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing so good. Oh my gosh, you've got such a good topic. What did you want to talk about?
I'm glad I brought an interesting topic to the table. I just kind of wanted to dive into skepticism a little bit.
Okay.
It's an interesting conversation I've seen a lot of theists having, and I kind of wanted to share my thoughts. I've been speaking with this group about it. We've kind of rattled off some ideas, and
okay.
I've called into other shows before. But I'm kind of interested in this one because you guys seem to be centered around skepticism.
Yeah, it's kind of in the title, right? The skeptic generation.
Yes. So I don't believe that the central premise, the ideas behind skepticism, I don't feel that they are very helpful to society or push society forward in a
really
productive way.
So I think this is definitely kind of conversation that we would be bringing a lot of our own baggage to the table, and so let's kind of turn out some of that baggage together first, so that we're speaking on the same level here. What do you understand the central premise of skepticism to be, and how do you view it implemented? Because maybe with your definition, we might agree with you. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the central idea of it is seemingly to dismiss claims. And I understand that if you're dismissing claims that don't have good evidence, but skepticism seems to start from that viewpoint. Of we have to start out being skeptic of things before we really know evidence. Like, atheists can say that there's no God assessively, but they start from a skeptic viewpoint. So I find that very problematic. I find that be kind of a confirmation bias, if that makes sense.
Sure. So I'm very interested in this definition of skepticism because it doesn't sound exactly like what I would define it.
Yeah, same here.
Would you have the same opinion of the value of skepticism to society if we replaced the phrase dismiss claims with maybe investigate claims, right? So instead of just accepting a claim, we don't dismiss it outright. Rather, we investigate it to see what we think and how it's borne out by evidence. If we were to turn dismiss into investigate, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't believe that's 100% the case. I feel like those things work together. I feel like those are kind of the stages of a claim,
Sure.
Before we dismiss it, we have to investigate. Investigating is the first stage, and then dismissing based on the outcome of the investigation.
Well, if you're dealing with an honest interlocutor, hopefully, yes. There are definitely plenty of people who try and dismiss things without investigation, and that's where we kind of, even on our side, we want to make sure we're calling people out and wanting them to have best practices. But so can I walk you through my view of skepticism a little bit? Maybe see if that helps?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so if we go back, to Plato's writing on Socrates, the whole idea of this kind of Socratic questioning, it was there to try and help with a lot of really derelict practices in Rome. And so what was happening was, you'd have these laws that didn't really make a lot of sense.
Greece.
A lot of these different,
Greece, not Rome.
Greece. I'm sorry. You're right. Greek. Thank you. People would have eaten me alive in the comments. They probably still will. But Brian, you'd have these different ways of doing things that may have made sense at one time, but never really went away. Instead, they just kind of became part of this dogmatic view of things. We do it because it's always been done this way. And so that the purpose of Socratic questioning was to go, but why? Why do we do that? It's kind of like, looking into society the way you would an old room and lifting up the couch and watching the roaches scatter. You're finding where all of these problems have kind of risen up, and the only way to do that is to question, why do we do what we do? Do we have good reasons? And eventually, he was tried and found guilty of corrupting the youth in doing that. But over time, I still view skepticism in a very similar way, that without it, we wind up with some really bad practices that otherwise we wouldn't even think to question, to change. Would you want something else or another way to address that? How would you do that without skepticism? And I'm not saying you would, but I'm questioning you because that's my understanding of skepticism.
Because I feel like most of the premises that are based in skepticism are very biased upon the evidence that's found. Like if there's a room in my house, and say there's a glass of orange juice, and I close the door and I tell you there's a glass of orange juice in that room, the person I'm talking to, the skeptic, is going to immediately, before they open the door and see that there's orange juice in there, they're going to say, no, I'm skeptical of that. I need evidence.
So that's contrarian. There's a difference.
And there is an overlap. A lot of people who call themselves skeptics are also contrarian.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Brian, if we're talking about that, God, that's annoying. I agree with you. I don't think that. And I think a whole lot of skepticism communicators that I know try not to communicate that either. The idea is, what is our basis for believing? So if you were to say there's a glass of orange juice in the other room, I've had orange juice. I'm holding a glass as we speak. I know those exist. It's not a far stretch to imagine that there's a glass of orange juice. If you were to say that there's a Komodo dragon in the other room, well, I know those exist as well, but it'd be tougher to sell. The evidence for a claim really depends on what the claim is. So if you were to say there's a glass of orange juice, I think the skeptic would be like, okay, I mean, I don't see how you'd get to the conclusion that they would just say no, right out the gate.
Well, that was the whole purpose. That was the whole reason I used the whole door analogy, was because basically it's a door obviously prevents us from seeing what's behind it, so it's answers that can only be accessed one way. I attribute that to the idea of an afterlife. Like we can't verify there's an afterlife. Once someone can, when they die, then they can't come back. So we can't get any verification. We can't get someone coming back from the dead and saying, oh yeah, there's this in the afterlife. You know what I mean? That was the assessment I put behind the door analogy.
Right. So can I ask a question then? Because I like this comparison, right? In the one situation, there's a door and it's closed and it's hiding something behind it, right? And in this other situation, there is a question that is blocked from verification because once you die, you're dead and you can't come back and talk to people about what happened. So I get that. I agree with that to an extent. If I wanted to verify that there was orange juice behind the door, I could open up the door and see if there was orange juice. So that was a way that is a way of falsifying that claim, right? Of making sure that I can determine one way or another before I make a claim myself. There is orange juice behind that door or there is not. With the afterlife thing, you've hit the nail on the head. There is no way to verify whether or not it exists in the first place because people who die can't come back to tell us about it. So making a claim about it without the ability to open the door is the problem from a skeptical perspective. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yes, I get the point you're addressing.
Yeah.
The whole argument I was assessing, basically, that contributes to it. But I was assessing that there's kind of, in the skeptic community, I've noticed that a lot of the skeptic groups they tend to start from that viewpoint, but they won't explain what brings them to the point of they absolutely need evidence.
Well, it really depends on what the ask is. You know, I want to build on that example that y'all were talking about. So there's an entire literary tradition that just kind of identifies exactly what that problem is. If you've ever read The Giver or The Lottery, you know, you have people who in one situation are said, oh, you know, people go and live outside of this town and there's this whole commune and everyone's happy over there. No, they're being euthanized. You know, there's the lottery. Oh, you know, if you get picked on the lottery, you go to this wonderful place. No, you're actually harvested for your body parts. So if
This got dark.
well, I mean, it's a literary, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's a trope. And so if, you know, we go back to the door and I say, there's $1 million on the other side of this door, but you can't see it. You know, people go to the other side of the door and they never come back. Oh, well, of course, they're millionaires now. They just left out the back. You know, what basis, why would you believe that there's $1 million on the other side of that door?
Or would you?
Because I have reasonable findings, or not findings.
Yeah, which
I
is
have reasonable findings that point me to a certain. How would I even acknowledge there is a door to have money behind without a basis for order? Basically, a basis that
basis
I have
for
to
order.
We would have this conversation. We have the basis for us to even have this conversation. That's what I'm saying.
No, hold on a second. That sounds like you're changing the subject into a presuppositional apologetic. Do you want to try and rephrase that? Because it sounds like you're saying you're starting to try and deny our ability to have the conversation at all.
Well, that's the whole purpose. We're even having this conversation.
Oh, got it. So you're a presuppositional apologist.
Yes.
Got it. What color is your hair, Brian?
Absolutely. What color is my hair?
Yes.
Brown.
Brown. I don't think we can have this conversation with people with brown hair. People with brown hair are just untrustworthy, Brian. So I can't have this conversation with you. How does that make you feel?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not sure I'm getting the analogy there. What's the purpose?
Got it. Absolutely. Sure. So I'm making an arbitrary distinction that has absolutely nothing to do with the topic and invalidating you from the conversation, just like you're doing to us. And if you think that it's valid to do that, then I think turnabout's fair play. Unless you have a justification that's not an arbitrary reason like that. Can you give me a justification for that? How do you ground that assertion, Brian?
Well, where do we ground it into personal attacks, Eric?
Well,
personal attacks like you don't have a basis for understanding what I'm saying to you?
I have a basis. I just explained it. And then he went into this weird shift in the conversation, I feel like.
I feel like the weird shift happened a little prior to Eric talking about the hair color. The issue here, Brian, is that we've talked with a lot of precepts before, and the thing that they have not been able to give us, which maybe you will be able to give us, is a reason why your presupposition is something we should be convinced by. So if you want to convince us that we have it wrong and that you have a basis for order or for logic or for rationality that we do not, you're gonna have to find a way to convince us of that, or else it's not gonna be a useful conversation and it's just gonna be you saying, well, you can't understand because you don't have my information. We ask, what information is that? And the response is, well, you couldn't understand it because you don't have it, which is kind of useless. So unless you really think that you can bring us around to this presupposition that you hold, this really feels like a useless conversation, doesn't it?
Not particularly, because I was hoping you would say that. The basis for it was the human instinct for us to engage in this type of conversation and us to have that kind of curiosity of what's behind a door. And I was comparing that to the claim of, like, you know, we're obviously bringing God into this at this point, so I think we can kind of go upon that a little bit. If we're starting from a religious viewpoint.
Well, I mean, all of this is to get us to that point in that larger question. So, agreed. And V, thank you for elaborating, because I think I may have lost Brian. If I lost you, I must have lost several people along the way. V hit the nail on the head. I view presuppositional as arbitrary, you know, justification to try and invalidate another's viewpoint instead of dealing with the other person, what they're saying. And so I think I jumped the gun on that. I apologize. V, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So Brian, I'd love for you to answer V's question. Do you remember what that was?
Go ahead and we kind of jumped over. Can
Sure.
you re-clarify, repeat the question?
Yeah, for sure. So my question for you is, why should we assume, along with you, that the presupposition that you are coming into this with is accurate?
And for people who are watching, the presupposition is that.
Brian, what is the presupposition? If you're a presuppositionalist apologist, what is that presupposition that you are bringing to the table that you think we should be convinced about?
The basis that human beings recognize that they are more than just human beings. They are more than just pieces of meat walking on the earth. That is the presupposition.
Oh.
You acknowledge you are a person. You guys address each other by your names. Why do you guys address each other by your names? Because you guys realize that you have more than a person. You guys have personalities. Why are you sitting next to that person? Because you like them. Because you have feelings for them.
Sure.
You have a basis behind that.
Why are
That
you
is the
assuming
basis
those
for
things are not part of being human?
They absolutely are, but they run on a religious basis.
What?
What do you mean by that? A religious basis?
A religious basis. Do animals have a connection to other animals like humans do?
Yes.
They don't have a basis in relationship or how to treat each other though. Like
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
They absolutely do.
They absolutely. Then animals are convinced that they can behave violently. Animals behave way more violently than humans do because humans recognize it's wrong.
Wait. Okay, wait. Animals behave more violently than humans? Which animal invented the atomic bomb?
Well,
Like, I think.
Which animal invented the? I mean. Well, listen. The atomic bomb. It could have been used for good, but it was used for evil, pure evil. Simple as that.
Okay, so hold on. This is a whole sub thing that I don't want to go down because I think that that's not where you want to go. I think that we can table the who is more violent conversation for later because I don't think that ties into your main point necessarily. My question is, why do you assume that there is something additional to just being a human and having all of these things inherent, the ability to feel things, the ability to think things, the urge to name things? Why are these things that you are attributing to something outside of just being part of the natural world as a member of the mammalian demographic?
the mammalian demographic.
New
we
Skeptic Generation and its sister
basis.
show, the mammalian demographic.
Go ahead, Brian.
If we had just a basis belief that we're just pieces of meat on the earth, that we aren't living, breathing beings that are made by a supernatural deity.
Okay, so we are living, breathing beings. It's just that last part that I'm confused about. Why is that inherent to the living, breathing beings part?
Well, I'd love to hear that last part he was just about to say. If we're all of those things, then what?
What do you mean?
You were saying if we are, and then you listed physical characteristics and things like that, then what? If we're nothing but meat robots, then what?
If we are just pieces of meat we're just pieces of meat. We don't have souls or anything. We're just walking around on the earth.
Right.
And we can't exactly have. Where did we get the basis? Where did we get the idea of religion from?
Ooh,
where did that
hey,
come from?
that's a great question.
That is a
Brian.
good question.
Yeah. So hold on a second. You're carrying with you an assumption that if we have souls, then religion would naturally come about. How does that happen? Because from where I'm standing, not only would those views be pretty much identical, but it would just be an unfalsifiable claim that you're stacking as like a scaffolding on top of what we believe, right? You believe that we have physical bodies. You just believe that there's extra that you can't justify, verify, or prove, in any way. So, like, why would having a soul lead to religion versus not having a soul? That's a really weird discussion point. Help us through this.
Well, the whole point of it is that there's more of a basis behind you as a human. There's more.
I get it. I just want to pin down your example. If we have souls, why does that make us more likely to have religion? And how are those things connected? And how would that be different from us being meat robots?
Because we couldn't. The whole point was the idea of religion, the idea that there's a deity or something that controls us, attributes us. We couldn't have just made that up.
Why not?
Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
From our imaginations, Brian. From our imaginations. So I think that seems pretty clear. Why would that not be the case? Why wouldn't it be that we imagined it, that we came up with it?
Because there's no way it could have been just implanted in our brains and have in their societies that created for thousands of years based on religion.
So it sounds like you're saying that you don't understand how creative thought works without your religious viewpoint. Is that correct?
No. It is creative thought. It generally needs the religious viewpoint. Otherwise, you're basically living in a world with nothing.
Got it.
No basis.
So let's make sure we're putting this in black and white. Can you have creative thought without a soul?
Can you have creative thoughts without a soul?
Yes.
Well, that's a tough question. Metaphorically, no, because if you're just a piece of meat, I mean,
it sounds like you're dramatically underselling the piece of meat thing, Brian. I mean, I'm sure. Are you aware of what happens to people when they're lobotomized? Because it sounds like that meat is really freaking important to being able to have any of those feelings. And so for you to say, if you're just a piece of meat, you can't have it, but it seems like the meat's what causes it. So where does that
not
even...
necessarily.
Got it. Not necessarily. You're right. Skepticism. I'm glad you're using it. So if you're applying skepticism and going, I don't think that a brain is necessary or that a brain causes emotions or creative thought, what basis do you have to make that assertion? Because you're making a really wild assertion. How are you backing that up?
I'm backing it up because that's the way we are communicating. I'm showing you the evidence of just our conversation.
Okay, what was that evidence? Maybe I missed it. Maybe it went right over my head.
Because we're having this conversation, Eric.
Okay, and that is where the presuppositionalism comes in, right, Brian? Because you're presupposing that we cannot have this conversation at all unless your worldview is accurate. And that is nice for you. That sounds like a very cozy, comfortable place to be. But for us, can you understand why that's not helpful? It's like us saying, there's orange juice behind that door. And you say, okay, well, can I go look for the orange juice? And we're like, no, the fact that you want to know that there is orange juice is proof enough that there's orange juice. Right? And you're kind of like, well, I mean, we could just like open the door and take a look or, give me something here.
You just acknowledged what supernatural force is telling you no. What would be telling you no in that scenario to not go look for the orange juice?
Hold on. What supernatural force? Do you think that...
You just acknowledged it.
I was explaining a conversation between you and me, hypothetically. I'm flattered that you would think that I might have supernatural abilities, but no, I was just saying you and me having a conversation. Brian...
You acknowledged a third party. Oh my, you just acknowledged a third party.
Brian, let me make sure that I've got this right, because it sounds like you think you've got some kind of gotcha. I'm going to throw something out here.
Oh, it's beyond a gotcha.
Yeah, got it, Brian. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to throw something out here. I want to see if this is correct. In my study of presuppositional apologetics, I have seen that there's this assertion that we honestly believe what you believe. We're just lying. And so it sounds like you think that you got V to slip up and admit that they believe what you believe, and you're celebrating that. Is that what's going on?
You're not refuting my point. That's what I'm saying.
I asked. No, Brian, stop. We'll move forward. I want to know if I got that right, because I don't want to straw man you here. I want to know if that's what just happened.
if I was celebrating, like I got some kind of, well, I mean, I made a good point. I didn't say I had a gotcha.
Brian,
You said it's more than a gotcha.
Yeah, Brian. So yes or no, did I describe that? And if not, clarify, please.
Yes, but I'm not sitting here like,
Yes.
oh yeah, gotcha.
Okay, cool. So I don't care about the oh yeah part. I care about the not. Do you recognize that you are absolutely removing from us this autonomy, right? This idea that we actually believe what we're saying. We're having this discussion because we want to do it honestly, and coming in having this assumption that we're lying to you is disingenuous. It's rude as hell. It's not giving us the same amount of respect or care that we're giving back to you, and it's just not being an honest interlocutor, right? Where people talk about honest and dishonest, and I hear that thrown around a lot, and I hate when people don't use it well, but this would be a perfect example of a dishonest conversation. If you think that we are lying to you and you're operating on that assumption.
I don't think I could give you. I don't think I ever said you were lying. I just said I wanted to point of knowledge. I wanted your thoughts on it.
That's why I asked you to clarify. You said yes, but you weren't celebrating it that much. I didn't want to straw man you.
I said I was.
So clarify that.
I basically was not being a sore winner. I was not being a sore winner just because I made a really good point.
Yeah, we don't care. Yeah. Like, you can be a sore winner if you make a good point. That's fine. What we're concerned about is the assumption that you are bringing into this is either we are actively being dishonest in how we are interacting with you, which is unfair because, you don't know us and we're trying to have a good conversation and we don't really know how to prove that we are being honest to you. So that's kind of a crummy way to come about a conversation. Or you think we don't have the capability to understand you and get to your point because you have some enlightenment that we do not. And in either case, again, this feels like a useless conversation because you're having this one-sided thing where you're making assumptions about us and not allowing us to actually genuinely engage with you. Now, I've asked multiple times for proof of your presupposition, right? And you're saying, well, the fact we're having this conversation is proof. It's not, though. That's circular, right? That's begging the question. So unless you have actually really good evidence for the fact that there is something beyond the physical human existence that gives us our access to things like religion and relationships and feelings, then I'm kind of done.
Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate a bit on what you were saying, like, Brian, we came back at things, right? You talked about emotions and creative thought. We gave you examples and asked you, how could you even point to emotions and creative thought as evidence for your claim? And instead of giving it, you said, no, you just couldn't. Well, tough shit, Brian. That's not how that works. If you have evidence, then give evidence. But saying, no, it just can't be that way, yeah, it can, and it is. It can, and it is that way. It can and is the case that we created these.
Absolutely, Eric. That's right. That's absolutely correct. But two words. Just I want to say two words. Free will.
Got it. Okay.
Wow, are you just like skimming through the apologetics lexicon here?
Yeah.
Like, this is impressive.
I mean, we could pop a tab in that chapter and maybe address it another time.
Yeah, you should call back and talk about free will specifically.
Yeah, no. So is free will evidence of emotion, of creative thought? Is free will, or are you just bringing up another thing so you don't have to answer the ones that we are responding on?
Well, at this point, I mean, I've already debunked those ones.
Okay, cool. So how did you, no. I must be stupid, Brian. Help me. How did you debunk that? How did you debunk the example that I gave of somebody being lobotomized and how that lobotomy, right, that meat is necessary for those emotions and those creative thoughts? How did you debunk that?
because every time I talk about a certain point, you move on to the next point.
No, I try and bring up examples to evidence to support, this conversation and show how in different ways, every single way you're wrong.
Well, the thing I want to bring up is that's not debunking. Debunking is not answering because we talked about something else. Those are different things.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah.
did you debunk it? If not, go ahead. You have free reign. Debunk lobotomies impacting people because of how it affects the physical brain.
Well, we've already moved past that point.
No, we're back. We're back.
Go for it.
We acknowledge, okay, let's, for the sake of this conversation, say, okay, Brian, you know what? You said that we were moving on without fully engaging. So we're going to go back and we're going to fully engage. And this is where we're deciding to fully engage with you. Fully engage with us. Give us a debunking.
Yes. Well, can you re-explain the point in a more sincere and less dishonest way?
Got it. So if you're going to be a prick, we're not going to. So I didn't, in a sincere and dishonest way. Brian, what the fuck, dude?
Well, I just would not like my.
What?
I would prefer if the conversation didn't just switch to the one part that you can't just assert blank evidence. That's what I'm saying.
Wait, no, I'm curious what the rest of that comment was going to go. We can't just focus on the one part that you don't know about, that you didn't prepare for, that isn't in your script.
Well, hold on. So Brian admits. Brian, no, hold on. No, we get the point on that one. You admit that you didn't debunk that, even though you claim you did, which is a lie. But I'll just chalk that up to being flustered. So, Brian, which thing did you debunk us on? I mean, it sounds like you're scoring points left and right. Include us in the conversation, Brian. The third party. What about a third party? What?
When she acknowledged that we're talking about orange juice through a door, and she acknowledged the curiosity to open that door, and she acknowledged it was being given to her by a third party. It was a hypothetical scenario, I know, but she still acknowledged the third party.
If you want to refer to V and you don't want to use their pronouns, just say V. But otherwise, use their preferred pronouns. It's they, them. I know you watch the show.
So here's the deal, Brian. I want to acknowledge that there may have been a miscommunication in that example. Perhaps we were talking over each other. Perhaps there was a lag. There were no third parties. And even if there was a third party, that is not a debunk of anything. I don't think you understand what this term means. This term does not mean successfully evade a question. It means address it in a way that puts to rest the opposition's point, okay? So far, you're 0 for 2 here. What's going on?
V just decided to engage in your hypothetical, which is evidence that V is honestly trying to engage with you. So,
Wait, what? Go ahead.
Were you not listening just now?
Yeah. V clarified.
I was.
Okay. V clarified debunking. Do you agree that debunking is not evading, but it's putting to rest the opponent's assertion by clarifying it and giving and supporting evidence? By giving supporting evidence? Yeah.
Yes, but absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Okay. Did you debunk?
But that is still the point.
What did you debunk then?
I've debunked the morality in regards to atheism.
Oh, got it. When did you do that?
Wait, did we even have that conversation?
No, we didn't. I think he's scoring points before he even calls in. Brian, when did you do that during this conversation?
Well, midway through the conversation.
Oh.
We kind of jumped over it. I don't want to talk about controversial topics, but
okay.
are allowed.
Again, it's not evasive, right? You can't debunk something that we just jumped over. We haven't talked. I don't think atheism really came up once. It was skepticism and whether it's good for society. Is that what you're talking about? Because that's very different than morality and atheism.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that skepticism is tied to atheism, so it's the same.
No, it's not.
There are lots of religious skeptics.
And there are lots of atheists who are not skeptics.
Oh gosh, please, 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 could you take all of the non-skeptical atheists? And we'll take all of the skeptical theists. We can arrange a trade.
Brian, I think we're going to have to take a pause on this one because we do need to get to other calls. It's been over 30 minutes.
It's been like 40 minutes.
Wait, can I ask one more question?
Why don't you call back?
I'd love for you to lead with the question.
Don't allow atheist children. Don't allow atheist children. Don't allow atheist children.
No. Let him go. Let him go.
No,
Don't allow atheists to rape
don't
children.
all atheists.
I think he said don't allow.
Nope. Don't all atheists. Okay.
So here's the thing. I would love for you to get a subscription to Freedom from Religion. FFRF, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, puts out a newsletter. It's called, I forget what the full newsletter is called, but they have a section called the Black Collar Crime Blotter. The idea that sexual assault is something that is tied to your belief, I think is, number one, reductive in a terrible way. Number two, Brian, if you do so poorly in a conversation, if evading is debunking, and you're playing Calvin ball by making up your own rules without even including us in it, and then you resort to Baba Booey at the end, Brian, you lost. And I don't even think this is the kind of show where people can lose, right? We all win when we have conversations. But in this one, we didn't even have a conversation. You just embarrassed yourself. And you're welcome to call in and embarrass yourself again, because I think that people should see that Calvin ball, this idea of, oh man, I'm just going to make up my own rules and I'm not going to tell anybody and I'll score points and it's awesome. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for you and probably to the people who know you. But you know what? Maybe it's not. Maybe they're all just as weirdly deluded as you. And I hope they call in too. Please, but don't degrade yourself by going into Baba Booey. You lose, sir.
Good day.
Good day. All right. Are
Apparently, we just got a message. Apparently, this guy does that on other shows as well.
Baba Booey?
The last little bit there, that excited little.
Oh man.
Little bit. So
I honestly, I imagine I imagine other precepts, because I've talked to some really, really kind and, honest precepts who want to engage, and it creates this weird, barrier, but they're trying, right? I imagine them just being so embarrassed that this is the same, argument. Like, come on, man. But here's the deal. If you are about to write in the comments, you're furiously typing and you're going, that's not how precepts argue. You're just bringing on the worst of the worst. Brian called in half an hour before the show and has waited. We have other callers, but he's the only precept so far. We'll have the conversation. You just need to call.
Also, just for your own benefit, theists and atheists, anybody really, but specifically people who fancy themselves apologists, which I bet every apologist in the world is like, Brian, don't call yourself one, please. Please don't call yourself an apologist. Here's the deal. There is a difference between actually understanding an argument and understanding the structure of it and what the implications are and how far it can reach before you need to bring in other concepts, and just parroting what you hear other people say because it sounds like a good gotcha. It was very painfully obvious to me that Brian didn't know what he was talking about. He had listened to other people talk about these things, probably people who did at least understand the concepts. And he was like, ooh, that sounded like a good soundbite. I'm going to grab that and throw that at an atheist one day and then say that I win. And it's very clear when you get in touch with people who are like, oh, let's talk more about that. Do you notice every time we tried to get deeper, he's like, oh, but actually this other thing.
Yeah, free will. But if we're not robots, it's just like this, just grape shot, shot out of an old-timey musket, just everywhere.
Why are you shooting walnuts at me?
Oh, that is a deep cut for those of you who've seen that show.
Okay.
Love it.